so much, which I don't know how to pronounce, and happy almost Easter neighbors. Like 3. And only 2 trolls, and I got rid of one of them almost instantly.
No, mine are still in my trunk.
Otherwise, it was just
All right,
people
we are back.
saying nothing or
Live.
saying thank you.
I assume we don't need a motion to go back into open meeting.
I think we do.
Yeah, didn't we do it?
Sure, we did a motion to get out. It's a motion to go back in open meeting. So
Yes,
moved.
motion to go
Second?
back in.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're back in open meeting. Let's take care of the immediate issue. Anybody on? Anybody observing at this point? Can I have a motion for, to approve our new board member as Ella Whitehead?
You can use the wording in the agenda.
Just the wording on the agenda. Approval, motion to approve appointment of library trust of Ella Whitehead as library trustee to fill the remainder of Mark Crossberry's term ending in 2025.
So motioned, so moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving back now to the consent agenda, starting on page 14, continuing through page 28. Any questions about our consent agenda?
No.
If there aren't any, then can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 6-0. That gets us to page 29, the projected year-end balance.
Yeah, this doesn't need approval or anything like that. It's just to show you an updated version of where we expect to end the fiscal year. And
The one thing I would point out here, it's a little difficult to read. On the top in revenues, if the number's in parentheses, that's good. That means it's extra. And in the expenditures, if the money's in parentheses, that means it's a loss. So it's a negative. Hence, the way you get to the bottom line of excess of revenues over expenses is you add up the positive number in parentheses at the top with the 1,082 with 674 and the expenditures at the bottom. It's not in parentheses, and that gets you to 1,756,392. So it's a little confusing, but the math works. So.
we can try to change the format if it's not clear, but we're expected to end the year in a good position, and we can transfer the expected amount that we've discussed in August, I believe, over to the reserve fund if the board so chooses later in, say, June or July. We're on track.
Kind of an odd question now that I'm looking at just the overall finances. In terms, I'm just thinking about all these small banks that you hear about on the news, like, you know, people are pulling money out, they're going under, and people are concerned about money. I'm assuming all of our investments, are they all fully insured through FDIC?
Absolutely.
The full 100%?
Part of our investment policy.
Okay.
We have a very low risk policy
Okay.
and approach towards our accounts. So
Okay, cool.
we don't take any risk, basically.
Which gets us to page 30, our quarterly investment.
Right.
So
This
I would just
this
move right
also
into that
doesn't
since we
need
don't need to vote on
approval,
it.
right? It's just for FYI.
Yeah.
You've seen this before. So.
Sorry, Richard, but I'm
Yes.
curious, like what Mary was saying, and maybe Blythe, you know, at another time can explain that to us. But for example, First Bank Chicago CD, you know, these are like $1 million plus each of these.
Yep.
That's where my question was going. I was
Right.
like,
Because understanding some of the categories of the FDIC insurance limits, you know, it's $250 at
Some of
least for
them are
individuals.
collateralized differently, but
Right.
it's all insured basically, and there's no risk. It's all covered.
So, but it's looking like it's just one CD, like CD.
Each of them are separately treated separately because they have different maturity dates as well and starting dates. So they're all different accounts, and so there's collateralization from the bank for each individual account.
Could Blythe maybe next time just explain that in more detail to us, how, because again, as individuals, it would be, there's different ways you can title, accounts, right, to get additional FDIC coverage. I don't know what it is with an entity, with an institution like this. And I would be curious to hear how we are insured for a CD of that singular amount. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that your question
Yeah,
too?
because I was thinking in my head, at
Yeah.
least with all the stories that, to your point, I think I always
Right.
remember 250,000.
Right.
So I'm just curious, it's a lot of money in one investment. So that's where my question was coming.
I know that North Shore Community Bank, that's actually a part of Wintrust, and Wintrust prides itself on having a certain mechanism that you can actually get more FDIC insurance depending on how you work with their different community banks. So that one I can, sort of imagine how we got there. But with the other one here, First Bank Chicago, yeah, that I would like to hear more about that.
Sure. We can do that.
All right, well, Blythe should be back next month, so maybe we can ask her to.
Yeah, if we could put that on the
Yeah.
docket, right, to talk about, that'd be helpful.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Or I want to add too, Richard, if you talk to Blythe tomorrow, if you want to send something,
Sure.
out and let us know, that would be helpful too.
Sure. We can do that.
Richard, anything else you want to say about page 31, the site and buildings?
No, I don't, that's just kind of the normal update that you receive every quarter, so just provides updated numbers, and not much has changed, since the last version of this.
All right, no other questions, we don't need to vote, so we can just move on to people already. All right, then let's move on to page 40 for the approval of strategic plan. Richard?
Yes, okay, so I know it's late, I won't read my memo to all of you, but I'm happy to field any questions that you have about the plan itself, about the process. I want to just take a moment to thank Noreen and Shabnam for participating in the core committee. We had a number of meetings, so it was a long, drawn-out process, but I'm pleased with where we landed. I know this is a little delayed in from what we had talked about last year, but I apologize for that as well. But I think, like I said, I'm happy with where we landed, and I think that this plan reflects what we heard from the community through many survey responses, community conversations, both group and individual interviews, looking at demographic information, talking within the core committee about staff ideas and kind of the state of things from the staff perspective. So with some of our community conversations also were with community partner organizations. So I feel like it was a well-rounded kind of input that we received from the process. I know Jean and Mary took part in the process, and
That's what I was going to just ask,
Familiar
so
with
in
it,
the past, sometimes we have very concrete goals, concrete objectives, numbers we were trying to reach, and we followed them. Other times it's been more general concepts. This seems more general. How will we know if we achieve these or not? Where are you putting balance this time?
yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So 2 plans ago, and even before that, the strategic plan at our library basically was typically very detailed. So it had 6, strategic priority areas, and then a number of objectives under each priority area with like staff members, attached to all of those. So it's very kind of prescriptive from the get-go. At at the start of the 3-year period. And one plan ago, with the current plan, there was some pushback against that, or just kind of a desire from the staff, especially to open things up a little bit and be more flexible with our work over the course of a 3-year period. And so that's why I'm sure those, Mira, Jean, you remember you were here, we had a lot of discussion about the shape of this current plan that we have in place, where we only have the 3 broad priority areas and not that level of detail of objectives. We decided obviously to have like those quarterly strategic updates that you all received in the board packets with, I think it's hopefully been clear that we have been very active in working towards those 3 priority areas and making progress. And it was reported quarterly to the board, and I feel like that was perfect, actually ended up being perfect for what we experienced during the pandemic, when everything was just basically like thrown out the window and we just had to move really quickly and adapt to the times anyway. So we didn't know that was going to be the case, obviously, when the plan was created in 2019, but it ended up being like pretty much the perfect plan for us for this period. Moving forward, I don't think that either the shape of, or the what we had in the current plan, nor like what we had in the past is quite the right fit. I'd like to kind of come somewhere in between, where we have what you have in front of you, which is the 3 priority areas. These are broad areas, but also, as I mentioned in my memo, we have been in conversation with the consultant that we've worked with in the past who can help us really be very intentional about implementing this plan, so that we have a process where we identify specific ideas and initiatives or projects, whatever you want to call them, and lay them out for the year, and then do that again for the 2nd year and then the 3rd year, and then also have a structure by which we can track, comment, and report back to the board, to the staff, to the community, what we're doing towards those specific initiatives and projects, all pointing towards the 3 focus areas that you see in front of you. So that all that hasn't been figured out, obviously, or else I would have, provided it for you, but we're putting things in motion to make that happen, pending board approval of this plan. So I feel like what is going to end up taking shape is, like I said, somewhere in between what we currently have within the 2019 to 22 plan and what we used to have with like the very prescriptive approach. So somewhere in the middle between prescriptive and descriptive, I should say.
I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to do a more hybrid approach. I'm a believer in metrics again, and I do think it's important. Accountability is important to the taxpayers, right? And the board being sort of the intermediary between that. So I think that's an excellent plan.
And it'll help us, and not just for accountability, but it'll help us really shape the work that we do over the next 3 years, which is kind of, broadly speaking, something that I would like for this library to move towards, especially coming out of a 3-year period where it really was so amorphous and couldn't feel like any stability, because of so much change. I feel like now is the time to really kind of dig in and make some progress on the 3 focus areas, like what we're doing for our community to encourage and promote and kind of build up this really deep sense of belonging. What we're doing for our community in terms of as a library, the core services that we're providing, and then again internally what we're doing to really build up our internal infrastructure and culture, given the past 3 years and how disruptive all of that was. So,
and have we hired the consultant yet?
I haven't signed the contract yet, but I have a proposal, and
can you tell us more about that person and what's their expertise?
Her name is Amanda Sanderford. She has worked with countless libraries across, Illinois and I think out of state as well. She's a librarian, but she's also a consultant, and her focus is on her consultancy right now. A vast experience with strategic planning in particular, and we already had initial kind of check-ins about what this design process would look like. So we kind of have a timeline in place. So all that needs, I told her all that looks good, and I just need the board to approve the strategic plan enough to know that I can move forward with all of that, because if the board doesn't approve and we kind of go back to the drawing board on this, then, which is the board's right to say, obviously, then I would want to obviously not kick into place an implementation process, because we don't have a plan at that point, so.
What's the scope of her work?
So initially, we'll start with, on staff day, we were thinking of having a strategic planning activity with the staff. So basically give every staff member an opportunity to have some input on kind of sharing what these three priority areas mean to them and how it speaks through their work and what ideas that they have and kind of start brainstorming on what it means to them. And then follow that up with kind of a passive input phase of like a few weeks where staff can continue to like see what other people have said and continue to have input, really kind of just like widening the scope of like the ideas that may be generated by that. And then have a series of kind of like, she called it management team meetings, but I would really shape it, not just strictly for the management team, but kind of design a strategic leadership team that would meet with her to take all of that came out of that period of about a month, and then start working on whittling it down to what is actually like what we want to concentrate on for this next year.
Actionable items.
Exactly, and then build a structure that kind of, outlines what it is, how we'll measure progress, and the timelines.
That's the year you were saying that she was recommending, or the consultant was recommending that
Well,
year plan?
this is a little odd because normally we would start it so that we would have a full year of work to do, but because we're about to start the fiscal year, I think the first, let's say, 3 months will be this implementation process, and then we'll have like 9 months of like the remaining for the first year of the plan.
Yeah.
But I was also going to say, having this process of having the 2019 to 22 plan, and then having a bit of a gap between that and this new plan, we've always kind of stuck with this idea of like strictly 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. And I generally like the 3-year range, but I don't feel like we have to be very rigid on this idea that it has to be tied to our fiscal year, 3-year period. I think that 2019 to 22, 23 to 26, sometime around 2026, we should have a refreshed plan, but for me personally, I'm not feeling like it has to be a certain month in 2026 or, I feel like we should kind of respond to how the plan develops and what objectives are created and then complete that work.
So Richard, do you have sorry, Noreen?
The reason why I brought that up is because I'm still thinking about the notion of planning out a year in terms of also our cultural events. Because I think that it fits into the way this is set up and gives us a way to start having more transparency and some more accountability around those kinds of things by doing it as part of, recognizing it as part of the strategic plan.
That's the idea, is to have, generally speaking, like from May through April.
I think that would be helpful.
So Richard, why this time do you feel it's important to have an outside consultant assist us with this?
Frankly, I have so too much on my plate to try to implement all of this. And I feel like it's been, in hindsight, in the past, as an administrator for the past 10 years, I wish I had brought in some help from the outside to help us not design and determine the things in the plan, but to help us along the path to implement the plan. So that's why I brought Amanda in at the very beginning for one session. I think at the core committee, she met with us at the very beginning, if you recall. And at that point, I wasn't sure how much she would be involved. And I always lean towards not working with consultants on this kind of thing because I'm doing it in-house because I really want to feel ownership of the plan and the content of the plan, and I worry about kind of like the consultant having too strong of a voice and role in determining what the heart of the plan is. Maybe that's just kind of like my bias about that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, so that's why we completed the plan in-house, and though it was delayed because I felt I wasn't ready to really bring all this together. And I didn't want to rush it, honestly, so I could have tried to rush it and bring it to you in December or whatever, but I didn't want to do that. So that's why it's here in April. But in terms of the implementation process, she is not determining what we're choosing to do in terms of projects and initiatives. She's just kind of guiding, facilitating the process by which we determine that. And I think having her make sure that we hit, kind of bring us along, do all the work to like wrap things up after each phase of that implementation process, kind of bring it all together and make it make sense. That will be helpful to me.
How many hours do you envision the consultant assisting us?
I don't have that in front of me. I have it in our proposal, but it's about $10,000 of work. So,
Is there any way that you can, or do you envision that as you get to that part where she's helping to do what you just said, that, Laura and I've lost the name now, the other,
that was
just
my next
getting to
question,
the
too.
point where people, that we start building some in-house talent for this kind of thing. And that, because I think there's a lot of benefit to having that view in the process as opposed to at certain levels of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're asking, and I think, yes, of course, we'll learn, and we'll grow. I personally feel like it's not that we lack that ability and that skill set now. Like, I've done that before for 2 strategic plans. We can do that. It's just, I'm just gonna be frank, we have so much going on right now, to tackle that it doesn't, trust me, like with this stuff, I've never hired a strategic consultant to do the strategic plan stuff. This is the time when I feel like it's definitely needed to hit us, so it's not about.
That's why I'm
not
asking,
even
I think it's important we
It's
understand
not
the
even that I'm
rationale.
questioning that decision. What I'm questioning is how much we enrich our leadership staff to be able to see it from those lens, as you move forward. So as much as you can without overburdening, I hear you.
Yeah.
Without overburdening staff, though, I think that we need, and that also the level of accountability for the consultant, that they have someone that they are explaining to, so that you have that sense, and it doesn't ever come away. Once, just to be completely honest, to come away from a session where it felt like what the consultant did was right on the whiteboard was frustrating, and I'm sure that wasn't all the consultant was doing, but how do we communicate what those things are and then see the product of that, so that's my only thing with consultants. And I'm just coming from being a consultant for a long time, it's after a while, you're riding on your reputation. And I'm not so sure how much the employers get it.
I hear you, and
Yeah, no,
we'll see
it's
how
just, it's not, I'm not asking for any.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's where I'm coming from, that's where my question
I hear you.
is, that's what's driving my question.
We haven't gone through the planning process or implementation process like this with the consultants, so it'll be learning process for all of us, so I think we'll absorb a lot.
Right, that's why
And learn from
I'm
that.
dropping in as many
Yeah,
pebbles for you to consider
Sure,
as
sure.
that process goes on as I can.
yeah,
Just to clarify, her consultant contract is below a number that requires full approval.
right.
That's at your discretion.
Yes, I believe so, unless I'm told otherwise.
Important point, Jean.
Other questions, comments about the strategic plan?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who participated in this, because I know that this is a labor of love. It takes a lot of hard work, and really coming to some solid ideas in a group that is so, what do they call it? Like, it was so cross-cut, right? There was so many different viewpoints and from all different aspects, so I really appreciate that. I like the idea that it's going to be kind of this hybrid sort of plan, so it allows some of that flexibility while still holding some accountability to us as a library to make sure that we are moving forward, we're using our assets in a way that's going to help drive these plans that we have. And then the other piece that I just wanted to say is that, I think I like especially the building a healthy organization, right? I think that that's a really important one based off of what we've just kind of gone through in the last couple of years, where culture and climate has taken a shift. So I think that that's really cool. We continue to give back to our staff and so that they know that we are, we're all here for the same common purpose and we want to move forward in a healthy way. And then lastly, just to touch on the whole consultant piece of it, I appreciate that you're going to be reaching out to have some of that extra support in that, because I know that our leadership team is probably going to be doing the nitty-gritty of the actual work, right? So this is kind of just, in my mind, I see it as almost an administrative piece in the sense that there are, benchmarks that need to get met, and there are, forms that need to get filled out, just making sure we close the loops on so many of those things when we have multiple objectives that are going on in multiple areas. It can be very time-consuming and taxing on those who are doing it, and I'd rather put the work of our leadership team into the implementation piece of it as opposed to the administrative piece of it, where we're going to be looking at as a board to say, well, have we met our numbers, right? What do they look like? All of those kind of number crunching and data pieces that we need to help support the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's a good point. It made me think also of another point, kind of coming back to the why of, for me, when in my experience, when I have taken on that kind of role during the process, I'm taken out of it as a participant, and I'm simply like facilitating and, guiding everyone. And in this time and place right now, I really feel like I want Laura and others to participate fully with our ideas and our kind of what we're seeing, our knowledge, our experience, and not kind of be wrapped up in, okay, are we doing this right, and get, crossing our T's and dotting our I's and getting it all organized, and so that's part of it too. So it made me think of that.
Richard, I appreciate that so much. I've done OD work for
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
So you're just music to my ear,
Yeah.
to my consultants' ears, because I think there is great value in having an objective party come so that leadership and everyone, in the institution can really focus, as you said, on working together and implementation. Yeah. So I also want to say I think it's fantastic, the 3 strategic focus areas. I'm really excited to see, what we do with this in the next 3 years. These seem, to be very excellent, really well thought out. I also am delighted always to see that we had community surveys done, that we had community voices heard, and that we also looked at our latest demographic data. And so I would love, if it's possible, if it's not, adding too much more work, is it possible that we could see some kind of a compilation of those points of community feedback? And also, as we've done in prior years, could we have a presentation to the board of the latest Skokie demographic data that also fed into the strategic planning process. I know I would find that very helpful, to be a board partner in this implementation phase of the strategic plan. I would love
I
to
think we can definitely do
see what
that.
you've all
I
seen.
think we did that at some point with the board, but like I said, this whole process has been drawn out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to our data expert, Devin, on some of the latest demographics that she's able to get her hands on, and I think that's already in motion and in place, so I can prepare for that sometime in the next few months.
I like that idea. I'd love to see the trends,
Yeah.
where you got your information.
Yeah, and the survey data and kind of qualitative data especially that came out of the community survey responses is very interesting. We'll do our best to kind of bring that down into a digestible format. We already have a version that, because there's just, like hundreds of points of data,
Right.
but we brought it down to something digestible for the core committee.
Mhm.
I'll share that with the board as a starting point, but
That'd be
if
great.
you want it kind of even more summarized, just let me know and we can work on that. So,
I'd love to see the summary and the actual survey,
Yeah. Yeah.
that'd be great.
And we got a lot of response from our community, from our,
Excellent.
yeah, we've always been a little kind of, unsure about what the quality of the data would be if we do those just general surveys, but it was surprisingly good. And a lot of people responded and a lot of people really went into depth about their feeling about the library, what they value about the library, why they love the library and what they want to see out of the library. And the reason why providing services that resonate is, one of the reasons why that's one of the core focus areas is because so many people spoke about the value of very core, traditional services like materials, books, spaces,
Auto renewal.
Even things like that, but finding peace and kind of comfort and in just coming to the library and sitting and reading, or having a quiet moment, or using having access to the computer, or just very basic stuff that isn't shattering kind of new areas or innovating, but it's just kind of how do we do those things better and make it easier and more accessible to more people, kind of what you were saying before about how do we bring more people into the library spirit.
Do we have a way at all of kind of correlating where this survey data is coming from and where it isn't? Because at this stage of the game, I'm ready to canvas, and just start knocking on some doors. It's like it's in an area that we're not seeing the kind of involvement that we'd like to see.
We have some of that, more so on the people that we actually spoke to in person, of course. But we can definitely, I'll share whatever we can.
I'm trying to figure out how to get to them. I mean, they're not here. And so how do we need to know why?
And that's exactly, that's something we are constantly thinking about, and that speaks to the first one.
Yes.
Cultivating connectedness and belonging. And I really want to emphasize, I've been reading this book called On Belonging. It's all about belonging and the concept of belonging, and we try to express it in a very short paragraph, obviously, but a very deep sense of belonging and a multifaceted sense of belonging, as opposed to a very surface level. Yeah, I feel like I'm invited, that. It's beyond that, right? It's a sense of belonging to place, to people, to have a voice. So it's a very kind of robust sense of that word. So.
Richard, can you send that title and author
Yeah,
to
sure,
us?
I just Googled it.
I still have it in my office, so it might be, it might be checked out. I don't know how many copies.
if you
Kim
recommend-
Samuel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe you could email that to us, because quite seriously, one of the ways that as a board member that I can participate in this implementation is I too want to educate myself more about the latest on belonging, for example,
It really made
and
an impact on me, and
it's
especially because
important
it's.
to raise our own awareness of
Yeah,
this.
it resonated with me because it's so much, it was so much in alignment with what we were talking about during the planning process and what the community was saying to us. And it was written post-pandemic, during the pandemic, so
Interesting.
it had that lens in mind too, so it's like kind of the perfect.
It's very current, yeah, that's
exactly.
excellent.
Maybe I should have shared it with everybody, but the whole I'm really hung on this whole language thing now. Because what I'm realizing as we start trying to develop more materials and produce more materials, et cetera, is that some of the things that push people away or that support biases are just inherent within our language. It's how we use it, this whole, under just how we use the language so that there isn't an assumption that you belong. We gotta cultivate your belonging. So now I want to take that and turn it into something that says, you belong. You're not using your resources. This is yours. And I like what has ultimately come out of it, but I just think that that's it's gonna be a huge part of it moving forward, is we have to start recognizing how that community we're trying to touch, whichever community it is, how they're receiving it. And if we're already defining who they are and where they're coming from, then it's like, never mind,
I agree with you, and it makes me think like this is just a reminder that this is really time, like it's going to take time and it's going to take like investigation and wrestling with this. It's not like just kind of readily apparent and easy.
Right.
So yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Like Harold Washington said, some of our problems can be solved with money. Some of our problems can be solved with time. And some of our problems are gonna have to be wrestled like an alligator in the swamp.
I think I've never heard that one actually, but I feel like that's kind of what this is about.
It's at the Harold Washington Library.
Okay, I never.
When you go upstairs, at the very top floor, there's like this strange alcove-y thing that you have to go through to get to the other section. And they made it a mural, because he would say it all the time.
Okay.
And that's where we are. I think we're at swamp wrestling time.
So coming back to why I think it's so important to present to the board the demographic data, the current demographic data of our community. I recall in the last strategic planning process that when we saw that data, that actually helped us as a board and as, as leadership here to say, oh, wow, I didn't know that this, that this is a part of our community. I didn't know, I've said here before, honestly, till we saw that data, I didn't know how much poverty there, for example, is in Skokie, and then the data, the most current data was there to really grapple with. So I'm glad that we're gonna be able to look at that together.
Yeah.
Richard, based off of what Noreen said, are there any plans to connect with other libraries, like our librarians, meet with others and maybe exchange, going to Harold Washington Library, seeing, what's there. They, like you said, they're gonna come here as part of the ALA thing. So is there anything in plan for that?
We do that all the time, honestly,
right.
and our staff are always going to, I'm just speaking personally, but it's true for many of our staff, I belong to like networking groups, like regular Zoom calls or in-person meetings with visiting other libraries and having them visit. We've hosted as well.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Chicago PL because we were just like in the works of them visiting us actually, because they wanted to see what we're doing here and just opening up that dialogue, and we do that at conferences, of course, and so absolutely. I think we can always do more, and now that hopefully, I don't want to speak too soon, but hopefully now that we maybe find ourselves with a little bit more room to breathe. You know, there used to be back in the day a time when we like organized like very specific like kind of
Field trips.
we called them unconferences back then, you know, like the loose conference where just like kind of go get together and see what happens. Like, but very intentionally like bringing people together, you know, like I'd love to do more of that, but
It's nice to see that it's a part of, implementing our employees' experiences and growth, and, not just within, but with other libraries around as well.
yeah.
Exchange ideas and that.
We're lucky, you know, Chicago has so many, the Chicago area has so many good libraries and strong libraries that there's the Rails networking groups for every type of work that you can do in the library. Then we also belong to ULC within PLA and ALA obviously, so there are like national level conversations that are happening. So,
Awesome.
yeah, thank you.
Back to strategic plan.
I'll keep my comment short. I read through it. I think what pleased me the most about it was the language that was used and not shying away from a lot of the difficulties that people in the community are facing. I think it's very brave to put it out there and to show how we as a library are going to be addressing these larger needs of the community. So I really appreciated that. I liked the mission, I liked the vision statement, I liked it all. I wouldn't say it's a criticism, but it's just something to consider. I guess this is just my marketing hat going on. When I was reading through the where are we now, going back to what I just said earlier, I think it's fantastic. We were very truthful and we talked about the difficulties that people are going to, but I think what was missing for me just a little bit was the element of hope and maybe a little bit of a positive message, like despite all of these things, the community really has come together and that's what the library's purpose is. It's really the hub. We are at the precipice now and it's an amazing opportunity for the community to come together. We can really spearhead a lot of these initiatives to really bring the community forward and bring us out of it. So I don't know if there's just any way if I was talking to Richard about it, I don't know if we're gonna be publishing the whole where are we now. I was just thinking this is going to be out there for 3 years. So just making sure that upfront message will be something that really resonates and is really going to inspire people. Because to your point, Noreen, like I think people feel inspired to partake in something when you're not afraid to acknowledge the bad things that are going on, but you also are talking about all the good things that are going on too at the same time. So that's really my own comment on that.
I already responded to Mary, but I'll share partially my response. I really appreciate that comment, and I shared with Mary that I'm kind of wired the same way. I think in that when I read a plan like this and when I participate in the writing of it, I have to feel inspired, and I think that many people feel that way too. You know, we don't want it to just be a stale document. We want it to be something that kind of like inspires, obviously. And we wrestled with the tone, honestly.
It's hard,
because
right?
part of it was we wanted to be upfront and honest and kind of sober in our approach with explaining the context because it was so powerfully like disruptive and unique for all of us, but globally, right? But also, so that made us feel like in some ways not wanting to overstate or overpromise or over kind of like say, everything's gonna be great. You know, I'm not saying that that's where you're going.
No, I get what
You know what I mean? You know, like kind of to state it more simply or extremely, but so we're trying to strike this balance. And I would also say that when we share and talk about this plan with our community, with our staff, with our partner organizations, I wouldn't read to them like the where we are now type thing, like normally we would condense it into like a summary sheet or like kind of like a little giveaway handout type thing that really is more a marketing piece kind of, I would say,
Like we have on the website now.
Exactly, we focus on like what are the 3 things we're doing, we're moving forward, like how can we work together, and invite the community to participate. So yeah, I to Mary's point, like the way we use the plan won't necessarily be to hand this document. Right, exactly, yeah.
It's heavy,
No,
it's heavy and.
Most people won't read
No, no,
It's
no.
like, we read it, but most people in the community, let's face it,
No,
they're not
for
gonna
sure.
read this whole thing.
Not interested in reading it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just one of those things that's, you want to be, people want to feel inspired, they want to be excited, and to me, the big message coming out of the pandemic is that institutions like libraries are more fundamental and important than ever. So this is really why we are attaching these goals and this vision to make sure that legacy and that necessity is really being met in a very authentic way that truly meets the needs of the community it serves,
I really feel like the campaign that you guys mounted, it gives us a lot of information. Everybody that I talked to around your materials and the way you presented, it was fun. It was just fun, and that's what's missing from a lot of stuff, because we're all so invested in it, I think, in some ways, that it gets so serious, that you lose the fun. And we need the fun. And you guys, you made the fun. I mean, I loved when you're Beatles. That was just like great. That was just like fun.
I
And
miss
people
that.
saw it, they recognized and they talked about it, And
Somebody please send
we
that.
need more of that. We need more fun.
To be continued on that. All right, back to strategic plan. Any other comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve strategic plan?
Motion, yes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, passes 6-0.
I appreciate everyone's support. Again, just the board's input and involvement in this is obviously critical, and we all have to feel this plan, right, and be behind it, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both again for your
Yes, thank you.
patience.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right, I think that's everything. Comments from trustees? Did they kind of just want to look?
No rails report? Just kidding.
Yeah. Are you staying?
I know you're having withdrawal.
Always bring it back.
I mentioned this, this ties actually into lots of those. So as we were running relative to the strategic plan and representing community and cultures, we were approached by a cultural group and community that doesn't feel recognized by the library and wants to be more engaged, wanted to know how they could do that with us. And then I've also gotten comments from groups that have been featured in some concerns about how Black History Month was presented and how Muslim, the current month during Ramadan, has been presented. So I asked Richard if next month we could have some discussion about how the library decides what culture to present when and how they reach those decisions. Not about a specific, we don't get into specific books, but what's the process? Do you engage the community before? Do you engage the community after? And how, what, in terms of process and policy, how do we do that? Which I think is a legitimate discussion for the board to be having. So next month we will, tied to what we just talked about, strategic plan, we'll be talking more about that. So people want to get more engaged, people wanting to.
And also that sense of belonging.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you want everybody to.
And that could, it's great to discuss all that, and I really look forward to that. I think ties really well into what I was describing for the staff, to have that kind of process where we're opening up and listening to one another in the same way. I feel like that would be helpful for the board to have these conversations about all three aspects, honestly, of the series.
Mhm.
Yeah, I look forward to
Great.
it. Thanks.
So to be continued. Other trustee comments? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, third, fourth,